Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. It is Thursday, June 26th. I am Patrick Daugherty, joined by Denny Carter and Kyle Dvorchak, where we are going to break down the burning questions in the NFL's northern divisions. That includes, will there be a rising Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson tide? Is J.J. McCarthy going to be any good? And can he support all of our fantasy stars in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul? There's a first-round receiver in Green Bay, but is there enough passing game volume? What does a Jameson Williams breakout look like? What does a successful Aaron Rodgers-D.K. Metcalf pairing look like? Who is Chase Brown, and what does he do? Is he real? He was pretty real last year. Can Zay Flowers take it next level? Something about the Cleveland Browns. We'll think of something to say about the Cleveland Browns. But check out last week's Eastern Division episode if you're not done so yet. Check out our live edition of the Rotoworld Football Show from Tuesday on a little website called youtube.com where Denny and I answer your questions. But Denny, Tyler Shough has answered a question, and it's about if he's any good at quarterback. The answer may surprise you.
It will. So Shough went on the Amon-Ra St. Brown podcast because every player has a podcast now.
We are cooked.
Look, every U.S. Senator has a podcast, and every NFL player has a podcast.
I just saw Jordan Schultz, the insider guy, and Draymond Green have a podcast somehow.
Sure. Yeah, why not?
A lot of podcasts.
Is the question.
There. Yeah.
Why not? There are not enough podcasts, is what I'm saying. All right, so here's what Shough said when he was on the Amon-Ra St. Brown show or whatever it's called.
The Rising Sun.
He said, quote, God, that's actually probably it. That's probably the title. He said, quote, I think for me and what I've been through, I've been carted off. I've been booed. I've been an MVP. I've been a starter. I've been a backup to Justin Herbert. Throw some stuff at me. You're not going to phase me if we start 0-2 and I effing suck.
Those are actually Tim McGraw lyrics. It's from one of his less popular albums. But
it's only the real ones will know that's a Tim McGraw lyric. Yeah. So he's so he's already forecasting. He's like, okay, obviously we're gonna start 0-2. Obviously they're gonna be calling for my head.
I don't even pretend we're gonna be good early in the season.
Spencer Rattler will be, people will be getting Spencer Rattler tattoos in New Orleans at that point. But I don't care. I've been through worse. Like, all right. I mean, you're 26 years old, so I guess you have been through a lot.
Lived a lot of life.
You've been right. You've lived a lot of life. He's like 4 years older than Anthony Richardson as Richardson enters his 9th NFL season. What's going on?
What is going on?
I'll say,
here?
as someone who drafts a lot of Tyler Shough in best ball, I think we share a similar mindset. It's like, oh, you know what? I don't care that Tyler sucks. He's going to start all his games. And Tyler Shuck's like, you know what? I also think I suck. So I'm going to get to play some football this year. And my whole argument for drafting Tyler Shough is that guy's going to play some football. And in the 18th round, not a lot of those guys play football.
Okay. You say he's going to play football. He's going to start a maximum of 6 games.
Nah, no. Listen, say what you will about Tyler Shough. One thing I know about him. He's better than Spencer Rattler.
He's better than Spencer Rattler. I mean, Denny, as a spreadsheet guy, sort by EPA turbo lowest in the league, and you will find, that's where Spencer Rattler lives.
Ian Book is better than Spencer Rattler.
Wow.
So,
okay.
All right. Cleared that bar. Yeah,
wait a second. All right. You're talking about Ian Book, who is so bad he ended COVID.
He ended COVID. He ended Sean Payton's time in New Orleans. That's really Google it if you don't know what Denny is talking about. The NFL decided the COVID-19 global pandemic was over.
It had to be over.
After American audiences
because Ian Book got one start. Amazing.
One start on Monday Night Football. It was a seminal moment in our nation's history. And by the way, Amon-Ra, listen, I know it's kind of a tough time of year to get guests, people on vacation, things of that nature, but I don't know, man. Tyler Shough, you could probably do better than that.
You got to, get Rattler.
Get Rattler. We can do better than Shough and Rattler, though, because we're talking about the NFC North, 2 loaded divisions, maybe the 2 most competitive divisions in the entire NFL this year, the NFC and AFC North. We begin in the NFC, the NFC, where the questions are just like especially, what's the word I'm looking for? Intriguing? I was going to say provocative. They're not provocative at all. They're very intriguing, though. We need answers. We really, really need answers on something Denny has already answered. That is Caleb Williams any good? But I should go to Kyle first, but I'll go to Denny on this. I'll throw to the floor. to him and just
cool. I'm fine.
Rising Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson tied to lift all the boats in this offense. A shocking amount of boats in this offense. We have like an entire flotilla, an entire armada somehow in the Chicago Bears skill core. They really, really, really need Caleb Williams to be good. After he was not good last year, Denny. Will this be the case?
We're going to need some boat lifting, is what I think Ben Johnson is saying. Okay, with the assumption that Caleb Williams is willing to play the game the way that Ben Johnson wants him to, I think this could be really good for him. I wrote about it in my Bears preview. I wrote about basically the reasons, if folks want to check it out, the reasons Jared Goff has become a spreadsheet Hall of Famer, because Ben Johnson has gave him so many easy button ways to get the ball to playmakers. Okay. And that is obviously the goal. I mean, that's no secret. I'm not divining anything here. That's what Ben Johnson's trying to do for Caleb Williams. So for instance, last year, Jared Goff led all passers in over the middle throws. Okay. Caleb Williams ranked 19th in that category. As far as boundary throws, Williams was in the top 10. Goff was in the bottom 10. So and Caleb Williams has a much stronger arm. I think a much more capable thrower. The one thing that to me is something of a red flag is that Caleb Williams was one of the worst as far as accuracy goes when operating from a clean pocket. And Jared Goff, that's not what he did at all.
I'll say everyone's smoking gunning Caleb Williams in the clean pocket thing. Like, I don't know, if everything else is going to hell, you're probably not even particularly enjoying life in your clean pocket. And the pocket maybe was clean at that second, but if there's one thing I knew about the Chicago Bears interior line in 2024 is that it absolutely loved to get caved in immediately. And they spent a humongous amount of offseason resources trying to rectify this, Denny. But I mean, yeah, when you're in the NFL, kind of the baseline is, yeah, will you make the throw when nothing's in your face, Kyle?
Yeah, can you hit your free throws?
Yeah.
Like, obviously, Caleb was put in a bad spot. Like, I think the offensive play design was horrible. The line was, I think it's maybe overrated how bad it was, but it wasn't good. You wouldn't say he was in a good situation offensive line-wise. And I think the receivers maybe didn't hold up their end of the bargain. Like, frankly, in terms of effort, DJ Moore, in terms of effort, didn't hold up his end of the bargain. They acquired Keenan Allen, who was really good in 2023, and some guys just lose it when they're 30 whatever years old. And some rookies just don't turn out to be that good, which could be Rome. Like maybe he doesn't end up being that good. So there's a lot of pain points for Caleb in the situation. But I think with the ADPs of Caleb, who's going as a QB1 right now, he was one of the worst quarterbacks in the league last year. He's going as a QB1. I think with the ADPs, you cannot just say that like, oh, they're going to improve. I think it's a given that this team will improve given all of the improvements they have made on paper. I think they'll be better. They don't just have to improve, though. It has to be one of the greater turnarounds we've seen in the past decade. It has to be like frankly, it has to be the Jared Goff, not in Detroit, but the Jared Goff from his first year to his first year under Sean McVay. And if you don't get that kind of improvement, you're not paying off the ADPs that we get from guys like DJ Moore, guys like Rome Odunze. I was on a show with Rich Rebar literally last night, like 12 hours ago.
Kyle's famous friends.
Yep. Guys, name dropping. I'm not saying, I just call him Reeves. All right. I'm the only one who does that, though. It's just me and him, are like, hey, man, Reeves. And no one else does that. Lord Reeves, sometimes what I'd call him. So me and Reeves, we're close. I was on a show with him last night, and he commented to Trevor Lawrence in the very obvious sort of career structure archetype thing where, like, you get the worst possible situation. I think Trevor Lawrence's situation is like the worst of the past decade as a rookie. And you go, maybe it's not even the best. Trevor Lawrence didn't go to the best situation afterwards, but they added receiver talent. They went from the worst single year coach ever to good coaching in Doug Peterson. I think Doug Peterson,
the most mediocre coach ever in Doug Peterson, which was still a humongous improvement. Yeah. The
most 16th best coach in the NFL ever type of guy, which is better than the 32nd best coach. And you say, this is how the team improves. And he threw for 4,000 yards and like 25 touchdowns or something. Perfectly fine numbers for a guy who was drafted as the QB 18, whose wide receiver 1 that year was Christian Kirk, going as the wide receiver 35. They didn't have a top 20 drafted tight end. It was Evan Ingram, who ended up smashing that ADP, if I remember correctly. And then it was the year I think Zay Jones broke out as well, as going as the wide receiver like 75. It was a setup where the misses are small. You drafted Trevor Lawrence in redraft. You didn't even have to draft him. But if it was best ball, you draft him as your QB2 or maybe even your third QB. The tight end was your tight end 2. The wide receiver was your wide receiver 3 or 4. And the breakout Zay Jones was your wide receiver 7. It was small miss and maybe not the biggest win, but your cost was so low. your cost with the Bears is so high right now. They have 2 receivers going ahead of that mark that Christian Kirk was at. Their tight end goes as a tight end 1. Quarterback, like I said, goes as a QB1. So I think for that reason, I'm still dabbling. So I can very much see how the number 1 overall pick with Ben Johnson, the line, the receivers, how he goes out and smashes. But a smash is just almost required at this point. And when it's priced into the ceiling is the price, I'm not doing much of drafting that type of archetype.
Caleb going ahead of Dak, that's some real tough stuff there. And that's a lot of thoughts to follow up on the various really good points you guys made, where you really cannot read too much into first-year numbers, even ones that are supposedly empirical, ones that like you can't really be gamed. Usually tell the story of who the player is. Sometimes just the first-year numbers don't make any sense. Like that just happens sometimes, especially when there's so many variables. Like Trevor Lawrence's first year was completely useless, thrown into the trash. It's like it never even happened. But then he said, he needs all the stuff, like the easy stuff that they dialed up for Jared Goff. One big problem and huge difference between these 2 quarterbacks, I would say, is that Jared Goff wanted that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was never Jared Goff's game. Jared Goff was like, all right, now I'm going to spin out of the pocket for some reason,
right,
and then make a really sick throw on the run. That's not what he ever wanted to do. So it was music to his ears when Ben Johnson's like, we're not doing that. He's like, oh, all right, yeah, hell yeah. Well, Caleb Williams, I feel like Caleb Williams sometimes plays quarterback like he's playing a game of pig or he's playing a game of horse. Like he's even like, it's got to be long. It's got to be alligator, man. We're playing alligator. All right. And so he won't even take the win, like the first 4. He's got ALLI. And then he falls apart after that. Like he needs it to be complicated and crazy. And that is a risk with Caleb. But I mean,
that's going to be a problem.
Yeah. There's no way it can be worse than last year. I genuinely do think there's truly no way it can be worse than last year.
No, you're right. I mean, it can't be worse because you're talking about a guy in Caleb Williams who had the same fantasy points per drop back as Aiden O'Connell. Okay. Like it just doesn't get worse. Really. It has to get better. As far as the offense goes in general, there will be lots of screens for better or worse. We just have to accept it. I like Luther Burden. I know
I'm drafting the mess out of Luther Burden. He's the one guy who the price is so cheap right now because everyone's worried about the soft tissue injury so early in the offseason. Like, yeah, it doesn't feel great when a rookie who was famous for being banged up. I
absolutely love when the only talking point I had on him all offseason was he loves to buff the field.
I know. Look,
and he immediately falls into football and then hurts something else. But with that being said, super dynamic, awesome prospect whose skill set in terms of get the ball in this guy's hands and he will mess up the defense. He'll just find a way to turn it into a 50-yard touchdown. That's really good for the Lions style of offense. So I like that call, Denny. Of all my doubting of this team, Burden's the fun one. And he's obviously the cheapest wide receiver too. It's what makes it such an easy bet to make.
I'll try to be somewhat reasonable here and just say there's a solid chance that he leads the team in receiving.
No way.
Yeah,
there's lots of burning questions to the teams, by the way. Will DeAndre Swift finally count this time with DeAndre Swift? Could someone who everyone seems to be forgetting about, including who we did not mention at any point during our Bears conversation, Colston Loveland, perhaps,
I like Loveland.
I don't know, be better than Luther Burden, the guy he was drafted way ahead of. Will DJ Moore, who's already basically publicly admitting to the new coaching staff's telling me
he's already whining.
They don't like the way I do stuff. Yeah. A lot of burning questions with the Bears. A lot of podcast fodder that we're going to have all summer long. Minnesota Vikings have become synonymous with printing fantasy points under Kevin O'Connell to more late in the 2023 season. It's crunch time. And you're like, oh, man, hell yes. Nick Mullins. I'm starting all my Vikings still. Doesn't matter that Nick Mullins is not good at all. I know we're getting 42 pass attempts. Everyone's going to get theirs, Denny. But I don't know, it's a second-year pro in J.J. McCarthy, who's never played. I don't know if the KOC approach from the past few years is sustainable, especially when it comes to this everyone getting theirs in fantasy. So, Denny, will there be enough targets to go around for a first-year quarterback to support, potential number 1 overall player in Justin Jefferson, someone who's on the low-end wide receiver 3 range in Jordan Addison, someone who's a high-end tight end 1 in TJ Hawkinson? They're being drafted basically as if the machine's going to keep humming. There'll be no drop-off whatsoever. What are your thoughts, feelings, takes on this?
All right. Well, we'll start with the pass volume. It will be there. Last year with Sam Darnold under center, the Vikings were the second most pass heavy team on early downs. Only the Bengals were pass heavier on first and second down, and by a long shot, by the way. So the volume and also the Vikings were over their expected pass rate in every conceivable situation.
Danny, I don't know if they signed Jordan Mason. I don't know if you know this.
They did, and they brought back Aaron Jones. So I guess watch out. I think it'll be fine. I'm trying not to overthink this too much. I'm not like a JJ McCarthy guy, but he should be functional and good enough to still have a good number of dropbacks, a good number of targets for these guys. The one thing that's
what he did in college. Attempts are a quarterback stat, and JJ McCarthy slung it all over the yard.
Yeah, he threw. Well, it's hard to analyze him because he only threw 11 passes in college,
in 4 years.
But McCarthy. I mean, the one thing that bothers me is when they start talking about his arm strength, and the players are like, yeah, I mean, he definitely has an arm. I mean, like he has a right arm. It works fine mostly. That makes me a little nervous, but it'll be all right.
It's Mullins season. Yeah, Kyle, I mean, again, they basically have not gotten away with it in Minnesota under KOC. We're to the point at Nick Mullins, we were not worried about starting Viking skill players and like really critical.
We were excited for Nick Mullins.
We were.
It was like, oh man, DraftKings released the Nick Mullins 317.5 passing yards prop. Slam them over, boys. We're getting to 350. I remember that week so vividly. Yeah, I think to Denny's point, like there is some like interesting rumblings out of the team. Like this is from a really good beat reporter in Alec Lewis from 2 weeks ago, actually, to the date. 2 weeks ago. JJ McCarthy isn't struggling. Let's make that very clear. Come on. You said yourself. I know my t-shirt is answering the questions. Like this, come on. You gotta know how people are gonna take this. But I think to put all the kidding aside, this is as you point out, this is a system. Not only is Kevin O'Connell's system extremely good, the printing press of fantasy points, but it comes from a long lineage of guys who print out fantasy starters, being that McVay and Shanahan type of tree. This was Fantasy Points Ryan Heath was saying that just like year in, year out, we've sort of lost, especially among non-rookies, the easy Konami code guy. Like you just don't get guys who project for 600 rushing yards going in the 18th round anymore. And especially when it's not rookies. Like Bo Nix had to prove it once. And I think that was kind of foolish. We should have just taken him as if he had a little bit of rushing juice. Jaden Daniels had to prove it. We should have just assumed he was a dynamic runner. And like Denny and I got paid off on those bets. But outside of the rookies, we're doing the thing with Justin Fields already. Like Daniel Jones, I think he's going to start week 1. I don't know for sure. I don't think he's going to start week 17. And he's already drafted every single time in best ball right now because we know he's a runner. But in this case, when you have he calls it the McShanahan tree. So now I'm fumbling, but I mean, that's what it is. The Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan tree year in, year out. Those are the guys who consistently outperform ADP because it's people consistently undervaluing the likes of Brock Purdy, the likes of Sam Darnold, which until Sam Darnold was announced, until Sam Darnold was locked in as the week 1 starter, I did this last year. I was like, there is just no way. Sam Darnold is too bad to be saved. And once he was the week 1 starter, I did the thing where I was like, he's going to start 17 games. We should draft him. But I had no faith in his talent. And I probably should have because this is such a good offensive system. And we get to make that bet again this year with JJ McCarthy in among the best setups in the NFL for overall passing efficiency. If you gave me a bet on him at like 10.5, is he top 10 or not in dropback fantasy points per dropback? I would take top 10. Like he's a little bit of a scrambler. He had a 400-yard rushing season for a guy who did not get to drop back at all. Right. And he's going to be an efficient passer. You get those two things and the spike weeks are really going to flow. Maybe there will be some down games in terms of either efficiency or passing volume, but this is just how we find the breakouts nowadays, especially with most of the rushing production kind of priced in at quarterback.
Yeah, you have to predict this year, not last year. And everything you just said portends. And two, the good news with JJ McCarthy is we don't need him in fantasy. We just need him to support the other guys in fantasy. I don't know what even a successful JJ McCarthy rookie season really looks like in fantasy. Going ahead of Trevor Lawrence and CJ Stroud and Michael Penix and Tua. To me,
really?
I mean, do we really expect JJ McCarthy to score more fantasy points than Tua? Like, for instance, that seems.
I think Tua people are doing injury risk, and like it's fair.
No injury risk with JJ McCarthy.
None.
Well, I mean, I think they would have said, like, they flirted with all the backup quarterbacks, and then they just did not.
Oh yeah, not at all. They weren't mysteriously linked to Aaron Rodgers at all for 4 months. On end.
Yeah, I think the fact that they didn't make any moves there suggests like they're rolling the dice. Like they're fine with the health of McCarthy. So
I really do wish the Vikings were not so cagey with McCarthy. It's making me nervous.
There's something just a little off here. And
I think if you gave me, does he play 17 games, I would bet yes. Like,
as we know too, with the pre-draft process, a lot of times perception is not reality. But like the whole pre-draft process of JJ McCarthy, the tenor was like, you don't get it. Like, I know no one thinks he's actually a first-round prospect, but he is. And like everyone is dumb except for us. This was like a few NFL like personnel guys. Like, I don't know. Like, not my money. So
I thought he was a pretty good prospect in that, like, when the team asked him to throw the ball, he did it pretty well. Like, he looked like he had good arm strength. He was a good athlete. He was really efficient.
He's a very good athlete, thankfully.
And I do think there is some degree of like quarterbacks attempts are a quarterback stat. And the fact that he didn't get them creates at least more risk. But in terms of like, did I think he was a bad prospect? No, I didn't think he was a bad prospect.
I think there's a lot more risk here than there was with even Sam Darnold last year.
No, I disagree. I think Sam Darnold was the riskiest pick on the board.
I think there's more risk with JJ McCarthy and Sam Darnold. Where at least we had seen Sam Darnold like have some success in a few different systems, and he was coming off a year in Shanahan finishing school. We just don't know what we're getting with JJ McCarthy, but we do know that we're getting Kevin O'Connell. We also know the Green Bay Packers were tired of having 4 wide receiver 3s. Some would even say 4 wide receiver 4s. Denny Carter. They got real excited. They went out and drafted a first-round wide receiver. Sure, it was the one none of the pre-draft gurus liked, and Matthew Golden, and complained about him endlessly. And sure, those other 4 guys are still there. And sure, they acted like they were one of the league's like most like foundationally run-based teams in the NFL last year. So the Packers, Aaron Rodgers was driven to madness by the Packers' like inability, refusal to take a first-round wide receiver. They have finally done so.
Yeah.
But is there enough passing volume to go around in this offense? I don't know, for Matthew Golden to be viable in fantasy, but for any Packers wide receiver to be viable in fantasy, because just things are so bunched up in this receiver core.
All right. So what I did for this exercise is I threw out the Malik Willis starts early in the season. He had 2 starts while Jordan Love was injured. Of course, Love suffered an injury in the season opener against the Eagles, if folks remember. So I threw out those because those are like the Willis starts were like 2 of the run heaviest games in modern NFL history. So they kind of skewed the numbers. So we start in week 4 to week 17 of last year. The Packers were
Pat's already side-eyeing.
Yeah, well, just because things were never right after he missed those games, where I just feel like after those 2 games, like actually we liked some of that run heavy stuff. And then he got hurt several more times and played hurt several more times. Or basically, I'm going to get cut to the chase of my cope, where I just don't know if any of the Packers 2024 data is reliable, Denny.
Well, I think
it's certainly more reliable from week 4 onward, like you're saying.
And I think Denny was hopefully going to make like a slightly optimistic point. Please.
He is. I think he's getting towards it, but we'll interrupt him 3 more
times.
No. It's way worse than you could ever imagine. I mean,
okay. Well, then I'm with Pat here. Those stats don't count then.
Yeah. Dead last in early down pass rate. Not even the Eagles were as close to them as far as run heaviness goes on early downs. Under their pass rate over expected in every situation, including second and third and long. It's just the volume won't be there unless they have a huge shift going into this year. Maybe you guys are right. Maybe
taking a first round receiver signals a shift.
But here's the thing about Matthew Golden: he stinks. He's bad. It's not that he's like okay. He's just bad. Like yard per route run under 1.7 and 3 straight college seasons. Are you kidding me? Get this guy out of here. This guy's like barely NFL caliber. He's going to be the wide receiver 4 or 5 on this team.
A bit extreme, but
Dontavian Wicks is way better than Matthew Golden. Okay, like I'm taking Wicks straight up over Golden. Forget about
the guy who's never caught a football over Matthew Golden. That's interesting.
Yeah. Give me Wicks every day.
Kyle, thoughts on this? I mean, I just feel like the Packers, like he did so much cool stuff his first year starter, Jordan Love. And something along the way spooked them. He was kind of doing it in week 1, but then they lost. Then he got hurt. And my fear is just that those 2 games he missed, they decided they actually wanted to be fundamentally more like the Malik Willis offense than whatever Jordan Love offense was developing in 2023. But there's also a chance that, Jordan Love was not particularly close to 100% health at any point last season. There's a chance that the numbers are just totally unreliable. And the indicator we should be paying to is they drafted a first-round receiver. Where do you fall on this?
I'm a little more. I don't even know if like you believe those things or just pitching them to me.
Kind of pitching them because I'm not entirely sure. I lean towards throwing the numbers out. That it was just a really, it was underrated how weird things were for the Packers last year is what I lean toward.
Yeah, I mean, 2 years ago, 2023, was that Love's first full season as a starter, right?
It was.
Like, I don't want to say he was a rookie quarterback, right? But a first-year starter who we really didn't have any information on. The Packers were 16th in early down pass rate on the entire season. Not to say they were a pass-heavy team, but perfectly balanced from 2019 to 2023, which is also some Aaron Rodgers years. Also, like some of the stagnation years from Aaron Rodgers, though. They were 11th in early down pass rate. They're 16th in the first year with Jordan Love, and then they fall to dead last. Like, which sample do we think is more meaningful? To me, I'll go with, even if you want to say you only want to look at the one Jordan Love year before last year, or if you want to split the difference and say that the answer is somewhere in between. 2023, they were like almost perfect. I mean, they were 16th. They were basically dead average. Last year, they were the most run heavy team. The answer is maybe if you split it, it's like they're 24th or whatever. I think clearly that points to an increase in passing volume. It's just how much do you want to say they increase? Is it a little bit and it's not enough to really make us that excited? Or is it a good bit? And we start to get excited about the wide receivers. Or does it look more like 2019 to 2023, where they actually are tilting a bit? They weren't top 10, they were 11th, but they're tilting a bit more towards the pass. Then I can really start to get excited about Jaden Reed, who I love, but also a little bit about like if you want to be a Wicks guy or a Golden guy. Dobbs, Tucker Kraft.
Never Wicks.
I don't know if I'm doing much. I don't know if I'm doing much drafting of a guy whose job is to catch footballs and he doesn't catch footballs. But yeah, I'd love to see him catch a pass because he's open. The crazy thing is like everything's like he's so open and he just does not catch football.
There's a reason he's open. It's like when they would let Shaq hang out at the 3-point line and they would kind of like dare him to shoot.
Yeah,
it's kind of what it is.
That's a sadly kind of funny good example.
I have a stat that's going to be get me kicked off the air real quick. Jaden Reed last year had 137 expected fantasy points. Wicks had 126. All right,
yeah,
so
neither one of them are good, so that's good. Yeah,
neck and neck.
Don't really care there. What I will say,
also if you, sorry, go ahead.
I'm very confident they will not be the run heaviest team in the league. Yeah, I will say that. I do agree with Kyle that but it's all to the degree that they're not. If it's only just a little bit, then we're not really getting anywhere in fantasy.
Also, if you look at their pass rate over expected chart last year, it's basically every time Jordan Love gets hurt, every time he shows up on the injury report, they're like, oh, we're toying with being balanced versus extremely run heavy. He gets hurt and they just completely shell up, which like is frustrating because if he's playing, you would think you should be able to, participate in the entirety of the playbook. But I understand from a coach's perspective, when you're a young quarterback in his second year, he pulls his groin. I believe it was groin. And then sprained MCL in like
it was knee and groin.
10.
It was not.
And then week either 17 or 18, he popped something in his elbow too. He had like a sprained UCL or something, minor injury, but it's another time he shows up on the injury report. Like the guy missed time, shows up on the injury report, shows up on the injury report. He's not healthy for most of the entire season, essentially. And every time you get weeks and weeks removed from those injuries, the pass rate starts to tick up just a little bit. Again, they didn't like turn into this awesome passing team, but they're like glimpses of hope that you can see. And then, as Pat pointed out, when they go out in the offseason, and not only do they spend the first round pick on Golden, they spend a day 2 pick on, gimmicky gadget Savion Williams, but another investment in wide receiver specifically. Even it's kind of like a funny one that I don't think is going to pay off. Frankly, I don't really think the Golden one's going to pay off, but they are going out and doing what they think is investing in the passing game. All signs point to me to more passing. And Pat, like you said, it's how much more. And it needs to be a lot more, but I think it could be a lot more.
Yeah, I think they never got into rhythm last year. That's very fair. Jordan Love is someone we really want to see him come into week 1 healthy. We're going to get back into rhythm when we come right back after this. Since there really isn't an offseason in the NFL, stay dialed in with us on the NBC Sports Now channel. Join Dan Patrick, Mike Florio, Chris Sims, Matthew Berry, and us from the Rotoworld Football Show for more insight on the biggest news and stories around the league. For more details, visit NBCSports.com/now. A lot going on in Lions land. They're making the transition to a new offensive coordinator. I'm from Ben Johnson. But Denny, also not a lot going on. They're returning the exact same supporting cast. We could have said, like, will Sam Laporta be better this year? Talk about a guy who never got into rhythm, was never healthy last year. But the Lion, everyone around the team, media, coaches, teammates, cannot stop talking about is Jameson Williams, where appears he already had a breakout last year. What they all are indicating is that we still have not seen the breakout yet. We haven't seen anything yet with Jameson Williams. What would a further Jameson Williams breakout even look like? Where I felt like last year was kind of the ceiling, like the scrawny gadget downfield guy. But apparently there's another level to this game. What would it look like?
He is pretty scrawny, I will say. So in case folks have missed it, Lions coaches and players are basically indicating that Jameson Williams is taking it seriously for the first time in his NFL career. And we like to hear that because this is a guy who has not taken it seriously since he entered the league. And we've seen that kind of crop up and be bad for fantasy, honestly. A breakout would look like this. It would look like a guy who is more of a target commander, more of a centerpiece of the passing attack. Of course, he'll be behind Amon-Ra St. Brown in the pecking order. That goes without saying. But Jameson Williams last year was only targeted on 17% of his routes. That's really low. Like that needs to be over 20% for him to really, truly break out and be consistently like a really nice top 15-ish, fantasy receiver. I will say this though, last year, his air yards per target dropped to 11.5. We can work with that. Okay. Like that's like Mike Evans, Tyreek Hill territory. That can be fine. Like you're not going to get a lot of easy button stuff, but it's enough so that we're not just going to rely on the big play downfield for Jameson Williams. Do I think he'll break out? I kind of do. I love his ADP. I think that he can easily exceed it. And I kind of like stacking. I kind of like stacking him with Goff and St. Brown. But Kyle says no.
Kyle says boo. His ADP is wide receiver 24. I actually don't know if a Jameson Williams breakout looks more like more targets, ever increasing shorter, 80 A dot, ever increasingly, I can't speak, ever shorter A dot, where I like a further Jameson Williams breakout is him just like reaching his full DeSean Jackson potential, Kyle, where it's like 1,200 yards on 60 catches. But do you agree with more of my take, more with Denny's take? I mean, is it even possible to like a more fully evolved Jameson Williams?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree that the best season, or at least the most likely best season we're going to get, is just popping a few more long ones. But like he's already operating in terms of like a per target basis, extremely efficient. It's that he does not earn a lot of targets. Like the yards per route run component of his game is, does he earn targets? What does he do with those targets? He does not earn targets. He does a lot when he gets targeted. Obviously, he's an awesome downfield receiver, but he just is not out here earning the ball a lot. And
does he not earn targets because when he does catch the ball, he gains 42 yards? Is it that kind of thing?
I mean, like, yes, but that seems like very indicative.
One reason Amon-Ra St. Brown gets so many targets is that he needs 14 targets to get 98 yards.
Yeah, I think you're underselling how good St. Brown is. Like imagine if he's a running back and he averaged 9 yards a carry. You'd be like, he's the greatest running back of all time. Like it's maybe not the sexiest and funnest. I agree. Jamar Chase is more fun than St. Brown, but St. Brown is a perfectly fine play, a good player to have your entire offense run through. Maybe it's not how you become. I mean, I was saying maybe it's not how you become the best offense in the NFL. They were last year. They were the best offense in the NFL, running primarily through Amon-Ra. So I don't see how outside of like, man, you hit a 90th percentile season last year in terms of just catching long passes. What if we get a 99th percentile? Like you just have to start taking targets from underneath guys. And this is a team that we already expect to regress. Like you look at guys like Jared Goff, who have a touchdown rate of between 6 and 8%. They typically drop that to right around 5%. Jared Goff last year was at 7 on the dot, so he splits those two numbers quite equally.
That's going to sink like a stone.
Yeah, like on average, those guys year over year in the past 10 or 15 years, I forget what my filter was, they lose about 7 touchdowns, which isn't crazy. Like if Goff lost 7 touchdowns, the offense wouldn't collapse, but you just have to expect this team in general to be less efficient. But then they lose a massive amount of the coaching staff. They lose offensive linemen. Like this is a team that's primed for some regression, and it's probably a regression of the like hyper efficient play kind. Those are the Jameson Williams plays, like the long plays that are somewhat unsustainable when your entire game is built off of them. That's a bit of the JMO stuff.
Well, there are guys who have sustained careers with that kind of role. It's far less common in the modern NFL, but there are guys where you let them go to work down the field. DeSean Jackson was kind of almost the last of a dying breed.
Yes.
But it is a role that used to exist in the NFL, and maybe JMO brings it back, and maybe that's the JMO breakout. That's kind of my operative JMO theory, where it's not like get him the ball shorter. It's like, no, actually just bomb it down there and hope and assume he's down there somewhere.
Yeah, if the thesis for him is like maybe he's a guy who hasn't played football in 7 years, it's for at this price, at a wide receiver 24 price, like efficient wide receiver 2, who I think is really good. Like I do think JMO is really good at football, and I think if he didn't play alongside not only Amon-Ra, but like Jahmyr Gibbs deserves targets, Sam Laporta deserves targets. If he didn't play alongside these guys, he would be a better fantasy asset. I totally concede that. But he doesn't play like he does play along.
It's almost a selling point that he doesn't need as many targets, where he can win weeks on 2 to 3 targets. Hopefully,
but I feel like that's Alec Pierce. Like, and if you want to say like, oh, he's really good,
he already had a better season than Alec Pierce ever had last year. But
if you want to say like he's really good, I believe he's really good, and I think there's a limit to the target ceiling. Why would you not take after him Devonta Smith? Like, I think Devonta Smith is frankly better than him. I just think if you gave me an NFL franchise, I would take Devonta Smith. Not an indictment of JMO. Devonta's really good. George Pickens. I would take George Pickens over him, and he's clearly cannot be the team's wide receiver 1 in Dallas now, but is an efficient wide receiver 2. Jalen Waddle. Like, I think Jalen Waddle's body of work is meaningfully better so far than JMO. I also don't think he can ascend to the wide receiver 1 chair, but all 3 of those guys go past him in ADP. Like, if the argument is there's no targets, like there is a really hard cap target ceiling, but I buy the talent, you can just make better bets on talent later.
Well, yeah, it's a very fascinating topic of discussion. Lots of fascinating topics with the Lions. Can Sam Laporta bounce back? Can Jahmyr Gibbs kind of I'm the captain now? David Montgomery. And yeah, can Jared Goff sustain without Ben Johnson? But those are questions for another day. We're on to the AFC North, where some of this is well-trod territory already for us this spring. Might not go as in-depth on some of these, Mr. Denny Carter, but we've talked about this one a lot in particular. But let's try to put a fine point on in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. What does a successful Aaron Rodgers-D.K. Metcalf pairing actually look like? Because we're having a hard time seeing the positive outcomes. I mean, they do exist somewhere in this infinite universe of ours. What does a successful pairing actually even look like?
I have some good stuff on this, and by good stuff, I mean bad stuff. So the Athletics' Mike DeFabo said that he believes the Steelers could call, quote, lots of quick slants to DK Metcalf.
That's over.
To keep Aaron Rodgers, quote, upright more often and take advantage of his quick release. Rodgers has reportedly looked really good in off-season practices. I know you guys are shocked. The arm is lively. I'm not hearing about the feet, whether they are lively, which is, of course, the problem last year. So, okay, I wanted to know if this quick slant thing is going to be a thing in 2025, if they're going to call a lot of quick slants to DK Metcalf, is that a good thing? So I looked into it strongly, and here's what I found. DK Metcalf's win rate on slant routes in 2024 was 9%, which ranked 112th out of 160 qualifying wide receivers. He was one of the worst receivers in the league when it comes to slant routes. So between that and the fact, as we've talked about on this show, that Aaron Rodgers demands very precise route running, and DK Metcalf doesn't read all that, this is a bad fit. It's just a bad fit.
For some reason, that scans to me too, where DK he's famous for being like the strongest, most ripped-looking guy in the NFL. And yeah, I feel like he gets blown off the ball, like at the point of contact, like very easily.
Right.
And Aaron Rodgers is going to hate that. Anything to add here, Kyle? Any words of maybe optimism, contrarianism, or the negative? Is everyone feeling negative vibes on this just because that's the most obvious outcome?
I think that's. I mean, I think the most obvious outcome is not like utter collapse, because I think DK Metcalf is a fine receiver, and I trust that the team like understands to some degree how to use him. I wouldn't say like, oh, the Athletics writer is actually going to like correctly predict the bad routes that DK Metcalf is going to run. But it's just more so that like, I think the best case scenario is that Rodgers is like 10% better than Russ was last year. Last year, he was slightly better. He was like 19th in EPA per play. Russ was 21st or whatever. Frankly, though, Justin Fields was above both of them. Justin Fields got benched. So like the aggregate of the Fields and the Russ stuff is probably exactly what Rodgers was last year. I didn't run the numbers on it. It's got to be close. And maybe in a better offensive environment, you get more out of Rodgers, but you're not going to get a ton more at this point in his career. I think the hope is that like they play an even better version of what they were last year. They get a favorable seed, they win that game, and then they lose. Like they break they like ceremoniously break the wild card loss curse, and then they just get to set the divisional round loss curse. Like they just get to move the bar one rung higher. but the ceiling on this team just seems so insanely capped, both from a fantasy perspective. Maybe the only optimism is that DK Metcalf can finally have like a 33% target share. This just is not a talent-rich team in terms of pass catchers. But even then, that kind of target share is going to mean a lot less in this type of offense.
I just don't see how Rodgers has truly like almost like sociopathic levels of like thinking you have to run the perfect route every time, like demanding perfection that is not possible from a human being. And it's never, ever been DK Metcalf's game.
No. I did want to say one thing about the backfield. I like Jaylen Warren more than I did last year because, his ADP has dropped compared to last summer. And with Rodgers' reduced mobility, he actually kind of conceded to dumping the ball off more than he ever has last season. If we get more of that, it's probably good for Warren.
No, Jaylen Warren will disappoint us in ever new and exciting ways. That's all.
He can't.
He had like 1,100 yards from scrimmage 2 years ago.
Yeah, don't overdo it, Jalen. This time it
don't
will
overdo it.
Denny, you mentioned the backfield. Your guy Chase Brown, just $10 shy of 1,000 last year. Caught over 50 balls. I guess that qualifies as a breakout. Fantasy managers are treating it as real. He's being drafted as the RB11. Only Taj Brooks was added, and I believe that was in the 7th round.
Mm-hmm.
All systems go for Taj Brooks. We're talking, about Chase Brown. We're talking about Chase Brown because we just don't really have any questions.
Yeah.
The Bengals passing attack. All the most important players are back. They played almost flawless football last year. It didn't matter at all, of course, because other things matter than flawless passing offense. But how real was the Chase Brown breakout? An older guy, but seems like all systems go for Chase Brown this year.
Chase Brown had a profile coming into the NFL that really interested me because it was just a super hyper productive profile. And he was old.
Not a real school, Illinois, but yeah, it was very productive.
I don't know what you consider real and not real. I guess if it's outside of the state of Missouri, it's not real.
Well,
but
Illinois and Kansas, not real schools.
But he was old. I don't think he did very well at the combine, so he was kind of dismissed. I like him in this setup. The Bengals, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, insanely pass heavy. I think we can bank on that happening to at least to some extent this year again, unless the Bengals defense improves a little bit. What I would describe Chase Brown as a high floor running back. He had a 54% rushing success rate last year, which ranked 9th out of 60 qualifying running backs. He had one of the league's lowest stuff rates. Okay. Meaning he just wasn't really losing yards. He was gaining what was there, sometimes a little more. He's running behind a Bengals offensive line that was league average as far as creating yards before contact. Overall, it's a good environment. If he keeps that pass catching role, he's the top 12 running back, I think.
I will, Kyle. You go. Kyle. I would say that kind of describes Chase Brown to me. And he doesn't really get more than what's blocked all that often, but he seems very good at getting what's blocked.
And Denny's tenor there was very I know it's not but you've got to understand just these pensive deep breaths in that he gets what's blocked for him, and then what? And then he doesn't answer the and then what? And I kind of agree. He very much is, I think at least, in that mold of a Kyren Williams, where the team both trusts him in terms of pass protection and running routes, even if he's not this special receiver. Kyron's a pretty underwhelming receiver. Chase Brown is better than that, but I wouldn't say he's elite at it. And they trust him at the goal line. He gets the money touches, and that's what he cares about. That's what we care about. And he also just gets a lot of touches, even though
it's also an offense, Kyle, that has always had a very profitable goal line back role with Joe Burrow.
Yeah, they're going to score a ton of points. They're great at passing the ball. And although obviously that means a lot of passing touchdowns, that just means the pie is very big to go around passing and rushing. But I will say, in the way that Kyren is a very underwhelming bet, and it's hard in the sense of it's hard to envision Kyren being the guy that defined the fantasy season. If you didn't draft Kyren in the 2-3 turn, you just lost fantasy. And you don't always have to try and make that bet. But I do want to have a little bit of that semblance of upside. I'm not sure if Chase Brown has that, because sort of the point Denny was sort of hinting at is that he was, this is now back to Chase Brown, 29th in PFF rushing grade, 20th in yards after contact, 27th in breakaway rate.
I was going to say,
29th.
Kyle, he's 27th in breakaway rate. He was one spot behind Najee Harris in breakaway rate.
Ooh, I honestly didn't realize he was that close to Najee.
I noticed it. Not a lot of yards on big runs.
You didn't share that. Huh? That's interesting.
But all of these,
you didn't share it.
All these numbers begin with 2, which is to say he's a starting caliber back, and being a starting caliber, like in the efficiency metrics, being a quote starting caliber back, which I just kind of set in the top 32 essentially, means a lot more when your team's willing to put 22 touches on your plate every game. If your number of touches per game also starts with a 2, and it isn't just 2, that also means a lot. So I agree with Denny. High floor play. There's not a
He's
lot
so
of
high
play
floor.
behind him.
What I would say about Chase Brown is that, as you guys just said, kind of the ceiling's not there, but the floor is happening. As long as he stays healthy, the floor is happening. Injury is a risk with every running back. You can pretty confidently, I agree. You made a good point. He's not going to win your league. He, almost as importantly, is not going to lose your league. Chase Brown is like a second, third, what round is he in? A third round pick. So we like Chase Brown.
I think he mixes well if you start with 2 receivers or like an elite tight end and a receiver.
He's a classic bank some touches. Yeah, bank some touches.
Yeah.
Bank some touches. Bank a short break. We'll be right back after this. It's the 4th senior major of the year, the U.S. Senior Open, where legends of the game of golf compete at the Broadmoor in Colorado Springs. Catch the action live on NBC Golf Channel and streaming on Peacock this weekend. My God, I had never said Broadmoor out loud before. That was harrowing.
I'm glad we had Bernard Langer as the cover guy there, because he may have played more golf in his life than anybody ever in human history. This guy is a machine.
He's a machine. He's also utterly dominant on the senior tour, I know, or the Legends tour. I went to his Wikipedia once, and he's got 42 Legends majors.
It's crazy. Yeah.
He's been on the Legends tour since he was 28 somehow.
He once tore his Achilles and then just played anyway.
So, guys, we're doing like a daily team preview series right now. I had Zay Flowers and the Baltimore Ravens. Where the statistical case for Zay is like a bit mixed. I thought the ADP has been a bit muted for Zay this year. I thought he was someone fantasy managers really championing the past 2 years. This year, he's barely being drafted as a wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 30 right now. There's someone that it looks like as a community we're not expecting another step forward from Denny. What I ask you is, will there be another step forward? Still a very young guy, still not a whole lot of target competition. I don't know if the Ravens' rushing attack can be quite as efficient and lethal as it was last year. They might actually need more targets, higher target share for Zay Flowers. Just raw targets too. This target share was already pretty good. Is another step forward possible for Zay Flowers?
I tend to think no, unless you get some like high, like crazy touchdown production from Zay Flowers, because there are just so few throws to go around in this offense. The Ravens 31st in pass attempts last season. Zay Flowers, he saw a pretty big increase in average depth of target. Last year, he saw a slight increase in targets per route run. I think he's fine where he's going. I just tend not to target him strongly. I will look around him. I'll look for reasons not to draft Zay Flowers, but I feel like I might be alone. I feel like you guys might tell me otherwise.
Well, Kyle, he's 21st in target share last year. Good, not great. A 16th in yards per route run. Definitely suggests someone who shouldn't be going as the wide receiver 30. But he drew 5 or fewer looks. I think 12 of 17 appearances. That's pretty
the volume. Yeah.
And it's pretty emblematic of what this offense is. Is it kind of status quo for Zay, which it would be disappointing for some people, but I mean, he's a good player. Status quo or another step forward?
Yeah, I mean, most of the times this guy's status quo or takes a small step that doesn't like blow you away. But former first-round pick who was solid as a rookie. He earned a target on 20% of his routes, 1.7 yards per route run. As a rookie, those are good numbers. They're nothing special. They didn't blow our minds, but it looks like he has some promise. Then the next year, he ups that target rate to 24%. He ups his yards per route run to 2.3. Those, like you said, the yards per route run was 16th. Like, he's starting to get into, this guy looks really good at football, and it's his second year in the NFL. I think, as Denny pointed out, it was really interesting that they upped his average depth of target, giving him higher leverage looks on average, and yet he was targeted on a higher rate. It's the reverse Jameson, where like you can't sustain yourself on only deep targets. And then Zay is like, well, no, I will just continue to earn more targets because I'm good, no matter where you're trying to target me. That kind of progression is really interesting. It doesn't always lead to more. Like sometimes these guys.
The Amon-Ra progression a little bit, and he's kind of been a poor man's Amon-Ra, very poor man's Amon-Ra, but similar idea, I feel like, in concept.
Yeah, exactly. Just the idea of like, I think player growth in general. Like, well, is there really another level to this guy's game? And like, I don't know, guys who are really good earlier in their career typically have the potential to find another level. Not saying they always do. Some of them, Amari Cooper, and they just plateau as good and never great. But some of them do take that next step. Like CeeDee Lamb didn't. He had his 1,300-yard season, I believe, in his third year, and the 1,700-yard didn't come till his fourth year. Like that was his true most breakout. Every year was a subsequent breakout of greater and greater proportions. Not saying we're getting that kind of season from Zay Flowers, but the guys who give us those kinds of seasons where they just add on another 400 yards and 25 catches or whatever, they typically have like a progression to their game where they look like good prospects, then they're good early, then they're better, then they're better. And we're getting some of that with Zay Flowers. I do think the offensive environment, just in terms of raw passing volume, like, yeah, it's a concern. And most of the times it's enough to stop him from getting the 1,300-yard season. But you just get a season in which their defense, say, looks like it did in the first half of the year for all 16 or 17 games. Like that type of offense environment, that can give us a breakout season. Or Mark Andrews, who like, I am drafting Mark Andrews. I'm fully cognizant. He just might be done. Like he was like, he was still really efficient last year.
Yeah, everything was good. I did the Ravens write up, and it was hard to find anything that was bad.
He was still really good last year, but the fact that they meaningfully scaled his routes back, they were like, you're not playing a normal role. That is concerning. And that might be like, like we were talking about how players can both grow their role and sustain that efficiency. He was efficient last year in a reduced role. That is concerning. You just can't, you can't say that like 29-year-old's role, or maybe I think he's over 30 now at this point, his role gets reduced and you're not a little scared. I'm a little scared of that happening. If he takes the next step downward, where both like say his role and his efficiency drops, this team is bereft of talent outside of Zay. And that's how you get to the Zay 31% target share type of season.
Super quickly. I'm just been surprised at the ADP. Wide receiver 30 for Zay. Who would you rather have? Or wide receiver 25 for DK Metcalf, Denny Carter?
Zay Flowers.
I think Zay. I haven't drafted much DK.
3 for 3 on Zay. 20 wide receiver 24, JMO, or wide receiver 30, Zay, Denny.
I mean, Zay by a mile. This isn't even close to me. He's a better player and it has a better.
I think JMO, unfortunately, I like shiny objects.
I don't, Kyle, what's going on? Why have we reversed roles? Is this a Freaky Friday situation? Am I the Zoomer who likes the shiny things now and you like the boring guy?
Zay is younger and better.
He's so boring.
What do you mean he's boring? He scores fantasy points.
Yeah, Kyle, for 2 years, you've been telling me, get on board the Jameson train. I'm on now.
No, not true. No, not true. Both his first and his second year, I was not drafting. He's a legit bad pick both those years. And last year, I was like, it's a fine pick. I think that the team is telling us they don't think he's bad at football matters. But at this price, your team saying they care about you does not matter at these prices. Like, listen, do you think JMO is a better player? The fact that he's less efficient and he's older makes him better than Zay, but the fact that he can't earn as many targets as Zay makes him better than Zay?
Kyle, why? Hold on. You're trying to tell me that you're holding Jameson Williams' age against him.
I'm saying he's younger than Zay and he's less productive than Zay.
Okay. I misunderstood. Okay, one thing about Jameson Williams, he's showing up to work. Okay, he's never done this before. We're gonna see if it works.
He did this last year, though. We got the good. This is part of the reason why I was accepting of a little bit of like leniency for JMO last year, is that the team did meaningfully change their sentiment on him. Like 2 years ago, they were like, "We don't ever think he's going to be a guy who catches the football," and we're like, "What do you mean by that?" And last year, they were doing the he's showing up to work. He was cheaper last year by a lot. He's very expensive now. He goes ahead of better players, like players who are meaningfully better and can earn more targets.
Everyone knows the Cleveland Browns burning question is who's going to win the quarterback job. We've talked about that a lot. We don't really care. What I ask you is make a quick case. Who is the one Browns skill player you really want to roster? Denny Carter. You have to take a Cleveland Brown. Who is it?
I'm going to upset both of you because I know you're big haters, just huge haters. David Njoku. Because you know why? Because Joe Flacco's winning this thing. Okay, our millennial king Joe Flacco is going to be under center for the Browns. Is it going to last 17 games? Of course, it's not going to last 17 games. Okay, but he knows the system. Stefanski likes him a lot. We all know it's a high volume thing if Flacco's under center. So in 5 starts, I know it's a small sample, but in 5 starts for Flacco in 2023 with the Browns, I just had it pulled up and now I don't. Njoku
700 fantasy points.
Njoku, I got you. Njoku in those 5 games, Njoku was second in tight end receptions and first in receiving yards. He was targeted on 27% of his routes. No tight end had a better yards per route run over that stretch. Let's go. Let's fire it up. Let's get Njoku trending tight end 1 overall.
Kyle, is Njoku your player or is it someone else?
No, it wasn't a joke because I'm just afraid that the first 5 weeks are going to be awesome. Like the stats Denny said, like that's alpha wide receiver stuff. Like that's what really good wide receivers look like. And then Dylan Gabriel steps in. And like, Joe Flacco, Denny and I were both so on this in the Joe Flacco playoff game. We're like, this just cannot sustain. He's playing Jameis Winston football, but he's not getting punished like Jameis ever did. Every single game, Jameis gets punished and he's playing the same style. And eventually that type of loose cannon stuff comes back to bite you, and he imploded versus the Texans. And he will implode. Like he plays a style that is very fun. Frankly, I still think works in the NFL. Like I think you should just let Joe Flacco start 17 games and have 3 to 4 of the most embarrassing losses you'll ever take. But like 8 or 9 wins, he's still good at football. But coaches don't really operate that way, especially with a guy who's not the future of your franchise, obviously. So it's going to be 5, 6, I don't think 7 of really awesome fantasy starts for everyone involved. And then in the fantasy playoffs, you're like, am I starting Cade Otton or David Njoku? And it's Cade Otton because the offense is so defunct, which is why I went with a running back. I went with Quinshon Judkins because I think we also saw Stefanski loves to let his quarterbacks rip it unless the quarterback means something to the franchise. Whenever Deshaun Watson was out there, they were doing everything they could to hide him. It was protect Deshaun Watson at all costs because this is the guy we need to find ways to make work. If Joe Flacco gets exposed, even somehow in the playoffs, if he gets exposed, that's acceptable. It was unacceptable to let Deshaun Watson get exposed. Every drop back was him getting exposed. And I think we'll get a little bit of that protection element when the rookies come in. Those being, I assume we'll see both of Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders at some point. Like, I just don't think either of them are good enough to start in week 7 and start through week 17, assuming like week 7's about when they take over. I think we'll get more of that balanced, protect the quarterback type of football. And Quinshon Judkins is the perfect back to just pile on 22 touches, and they won't be the most fun. He'll be like Najee Harris. But if you tell me I get to re-roll the dice, I'm like, maybe Najee Harris has a little more juice and he's going to dominate the backfield. I really like drafting Quinshon Judkins for that type of profile. And I honestly don't hate drafting Dylan Sampson as like a 20th round best ball flyer too.
I'm just going to say Jerry Jeudy derangement syndrome is real. 1,200 yards, wide receiver 38. It's not like he had good quarterback play last year. Very limited target competition. Where I'm signing up for the Jerry Jeudy ride, even though it's a very frustrating ride always.
Yeah, I'm good with it. Let's do it.
Wide receiver 38 is insane.
It is. It's too much. It's gone too far.
It's gone too far. This show has gone too far. We're out of time. We're out of topics. But guess what? We're going to be back on Tuesday with more. The cadence is a little different the next few weeks. Only one show for the holiday week. We're going to talk about the Southern divisions on Tuesday, July 1st with Denny and Kyle. I'll be back the following week with 2 shows. One, a YouTube Q&A with Mr. Denny and I, where we answer any and all of your questions. If they're good, if they're bad, I pretend I don't see them.
We kick you out.
Kick you out of the chat. So for Denny, for Kyle, and Pat, thank you so much for listening. We will be back with you on Tuesday.